Hey everyone, welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden. This episode's going to be a little bit long, so I apologize in advance, but it's really important. The Gray Zone dropped a metaphorical nuke on BreadTube, so Kit Clarenberg and Max Blumenthal, thank you for giving me this wonderful Christmas present. I highly recommend you guys read the entire article. We'll read about half of it here, and it's still going to be long. It's a long-ass article, but basically, in a nutshell, there have been some leaked documents linking UK BreadTubers, in this case Abigail Thorne, who has over 1 million subscribers, as being linked to PsyOps and the deep state in the UK with a company called Valence. And we're going to talk about their CEO and a couple of the employees having, deep ties to UK intelligence who are using propaganda and psyops to destabilize Syria and try to propagandize their people against Bashar al-Assad. They are now all together working through Valence, a propaganda op running through Abigail Thorne to try to understand, but more than that, spy on, surveil, and look at how people on social media are consuming their information about COVID and looking to try to propagandize all the people and even demonize the people that are necessarily anti-vaxxer or anti-lockdown. So in a complicated way, we're going to explain how the UK deep state is using BreadTube to basically propagandize and to also kind of spy on people in a way that collects their data so that they can make their social media campaign against anti-vaxxers more potent, make it land easier. So that's what a PSYOP is. We're going to go into detail here. It's also fun. They make fun of Vosh a little bit in here. And Caleb Maupin, somebody who I recommend highly, his books, and who I've spoken with, not too personally, but spoken with on a couple different summits here. He's an awesome guy, and he's proven right because he predicted all of this stuff. So we'll go over that as well. So let's start from the top here. Leaked documents have revealed a state-sponsored influence operation designed to undermine critics of the British government's coronavirus policies by astroturfing a prominent founder of the BreadTube clique of anti-fascist YouTube influencers. The project aims to conduct psychological profiling on British citizens dissenting against policies such as mandatory vaccination and lockdowns, then leverage that data to establish a YouTube channel that portrays these critics as dangerous, quote, super spreaders of disinformation. Designed to, quote, curb the influence of pseudoscience material online with specific emphasis on coronavirus-related anti-vaxxing sentiment, the operation is run by UK's Royal Institution and dubbed Challenging Pseudoscience. And we'll get to how Royal Institution is related to Valent in a second. Its top patron is Charles, the Prince of Wales, next in line to the British throne, who recently hit out as supposed, quote, conspiracy theories surrounding COVID-19 vaccines. The organization received a substantial cash injection in 2020 from the UK government's Cultural Recovery Fund earmarked for video production. Leaked files obtained by the Grey Zone indicate that the Royal Institution has enlisted the services of Valent Projects, that's what I was talking about, a social change communications firm founded by a public relations operative previously involved in the UK Foreign Office's campaign for violent regime change in Syria, and his name is Khan. We'll get to him in a second. Khan. Valent has also been sponsored by the U.S. Agency for International Development as a U.S. intelligence cutout for a project aimed at, quote, investigating disinformation. Valent's central role in the operation highlights the trend of information warfare specialists bringing the techniques they honed against targets like the Syrian government back home to the West, where increasingly unpopular governments confront masses of citizens ever bristling at coronavirus restrictions. As in Syria, where the communications firms like Valent created, trained, and instrumentalized media organizations to further regime change objectives, they have covertly recruited a famed British YouTube influencer to lend their carefully calculated messaging campaign an authentic flavor. According to internal documents, Valent plans to design a, quote, mass appeal social media campaign fronted and owned by prominent social media figure Abigail Thorne, the founder of PhilosophyTube. Valent's research on British citizens who reject official policy on COVID-19, quote, will be used to devise a campaign that utilizes YouTuber Abigail Thorne's existing platform to achieve a measurable cognitive shift in the target audience, the files state. Boasting over 1 million subscribers on her YouTube channel and more than 7,000 Patreon supporters, Thorne has established a potent vehicle for any communications campaign. She is also a core member of BreadTube, an assortment of left-branded social media influencers that has attracted intense establishment interest for its purported ability to, quote, pop YouTube's political bubbles to create a space for de-radicalization. While top BreadTubers are best known for employing memes and theatrical ploys to counter right-wing narratives, they have also dedicated intense energy to attacking the anti-imperialist left as tankies engaging in a, quote, red-brown alliance with the right-wing extremists. In his book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism, Examining the New Brand of Internet Pseudo-Socialism, socialist organizer Caleb Maupin likened BreadTube to counter-gangs deployed by British and U.S. intelligence to infiltrate and dismantle insurgent forces from Kenya to Southeast Asia. BreadTube, quote, speaks in the name of left-wing sounding ideals. In reality, it is likely serving one section of the American ruling elite and the intelligence agencies, Maupin wrote. The covert relationship between BreadTube's Abigail Thorne, Valent Projects, and the Royal Institute appears to validate Maupin's thesis. Quote, it does not surprise me at all to find out there is documented evidence that the British royal family and an intelligence contractor is bankrolling the work of Abigail Thorne, Maupin told the Grey Zone. Quote, it lines up with everything I have observed about her and the BreadTube trend overall. Now let's go down here a little bit. It talks a little bit about BreadTube and Abigail Thorne's channel. We're going to skip over that. I would like to point out that they called out Vosh here, so this is funny. Other popular BreadTube figures include Vosh, a video gamer from Beverly Hills, California, named Ian Koczynski. Koczynski, is that his real name? Known for his superficial understanding of Marxism, crude invective against Trump supporters, quote, they disappear or we all do, female high school athletes, quote, sorry you fucking suck, dumb bitch, and imprisoned journalist Julian Assange, quote, I want Assange to die in a CIA black site just because it would trigger all the worst people on Twitter. The self-described libertarian socialist has earned the moniker Vosh Limbaugh from his critics. I just thought that was nice. And let's see here. Going back to what Maupin said, quote, all the key signs of infiltration are there, Caleb Maupin said of BreadTube. Quote, since when does U.S. mainstream media highlight the work of Marxist revolutionaries? Why are people who seem so unfamiliar with the basic elements of socialist ideology suddenly elevated to the position of respected experts by the algorithms? Why do their foreign policy views seem to line up so closely with the State Department? I have had no doubt that they were being covertly supported by powerful entities with goals other than overthrowing capitalism. And we're going to go forward here and talk a little bit more about challenging pseudoscience project. But this is the importance of what we do, what Political Fight Club is, the people that get on here to make sure that we keep an eye on the content of these idiots. And if you're a smart person, you can spot propaganda when you see it. This is just the receipts that back up yours and my wondering whether or not these people are actually being paid by the deep state. Now, there are some that likely started out, most of them probably started out honestly, and then their channels get co-opted as they get big. But some of them, I mean, they might even be plants. We don't know for sure, but I've always kind of guessed that you're more and more likely to have money thrown at you and to have these entities come after you and infiltrate you and co-opt you as you get bigger. And that's what I think what happens with a lot of these YouTubers is they get too big for their britches. They don't understand when they're being co-opted, and that's why we all have to keep an eye on each other. It's super important for Political Fight Club for us to make sure that nobody goes down the Vosh or the TYT lane. Now, I don't know for a fact that like TYT is infiltrated by the CIA, but I mean, we know that they took a lot of money from rich people, and a lot of their views have been way off in terms of their data. Like Russiagate was 100% debunked. Have they ever retracted anything or said they're sorry for propagating this propaganda? No, they haven't. So like, we have to keep an eye on these people, and that's why I love this article, and it's important for us to protect good journalists who expose this type of BreadTube fuckery. So let's keep going here. The challenging pseudoscience operation designed for Thorne was launched in February 2021 by liberal science journalist Angela Saini, the author of several popular titles and a forthcoming book on the origins of patriarchy. She is also part of the Lancet COVID-19 Commission's Task Force on Global Health Diplomacy. The commission's chief, Peter Daszak, a zoologist who serves as president of the U.S.-based NGO known as EcoHealth Alliance, was forced to resign in June over conflict of interest issues. If you guys remember, EcoHealth Alliance was the link between the NIH and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's how we knew that Fauci was actually aware of the United States funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. So let's keep going here. Gosh, my nose is itchy today. It's so dry out here in the Midwest. In the years leading up to the outbreak of COVID-19, Daszak worked extensively on bat coronaviruses and gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. His organization received tens of millions in funding from the Pentagon's Defense Threat Reduction Agency, a division, quote, countering weapons of mass destruction and improvised threat networks. In December 2019, Daszak warned that coronaviruses can get into human cells. One can then manipulate them in a lab pretty easily, and you cannot vaccinate against them. The host of Saini's project, the Royal Institute, was founded in 1799 by British scientists and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to talk about how the Royal Institute got going here. But we need to talk about how it is linked to Valent Projects, which is right here. The files indicate that the Royal Institution enlisted the services of Valent Projects, a communications firm, quote, working with clients in the UK and all over the world to counter disinformation and strengthen the bonds between people. Valent was founded by Emil Khan. This is the guy I was telling you about. Emil Khan, a former Reuters and BBC reporter who officially left journalism, quote, to help good causes navigate the new information landscape. From February, Valent Projects proposed a, quote, two-phase project to, quote, develop an understanding of the psychological drivers behind the generation and spread of anti-vaxxer narratives. It planned to exploit this data to develop and test public messaging responses. The findings would then, quote, inform other programming by challenging pseudoscience, as well as other stakeholders, including the science community and concerned governments and public health bodies. In the campaign's first phase, extensive online interviews were to be conducted, along with the ethnographic research to secure, quote, comprehensive understanding of key online audiences driving anti-vaxxing disinformation around the coronavirus pandemic. So the first part is basically just, spying on you in social media and monitoring your responses to things. That's a PSYOP. Second part, Valent Projects then plan to, quote, draw together insights from these findings, developing comprehensive audience profiles, including, quote, demographic information to design a mass appeal social media campaign fronted and owned by prominent social media figure Abigail Thorne, who runs online channel PhilosophyTube. Valent indicated its intent to exploit PhilosophyTube's sizable platform to, quote, achieve a measurable cognitive shift, emphasis added, in the target audience. They're designing propaganda, is what they're doing. And they're designing it based on your reactions by watching you. Reaching the intended viewers was forecast to be a significant task in itself, however. Valent noted most PhilosophyTube viewers are within 18 to 35 age range, but existing research suggested that most prolific consumers of pseudoscience material were over the age of 45. So I'm going to go on. There's a couple, they talk a little bit more about that, but that's the important part here. Okay. Multiple requests for comment from the Gray Zone to Abigail Thorne's agent and Angela Saini have gone unanswered. When quizzed about the leaked files on Twitter, Valent Project CEO Emil Khan flew into a rage, angrily asserting that they were, quote, obtained through hacking and then doctored in the matter of classic doxing, and threatened legal action against this journalist for publicizing them. Khan later pumped out a series of tweets aimed at controlling the damage of his imminent exposure. In one, he falsely claimed that the co-author of this piece would publish the reporting in, quote, a Russian state-affiliated media. Sound like anybody you guys know? Sounds like TYT. Every time somebody exposes you for looking goofy, like for instance, Aaron Mate debated Cenk Uygur and ended up being right on Russiagate, they just smear you. That's what they do with everybody. They go out and call everybody that calls them out on their bullshit and their corruption is a Russian asset. Anyway, just a little parallelism there. Let's keep going. Yet when challenged about his claim of doctoring, Khan did not respond. Subsequent requests for clarity on which elements of the documents were maliciously altered and how that might have been taken place have also gone unanswered, but evidence of the secret project's existence was hiding in plain sight. For example, Valent Projects lists the Royal Institution on its website as a client. An accompanying write-up notes it, quote, developed and implemented a data-led behavior change campaign aimed at understanding and working with the psychological drivers behind anti-vaxxers' sentiment in the UK for the organization. Similarly, a post on the company's official LinkedIn page refers to an quote, analysis of tens of thousands of UK-based social media users posting and sharing anti-vax content online. It conducted for countering pseudoscience, which would, quote, be used to inform ethnographic research designed to understand why people hold these views. In other words, a specific programming strand outlined in the documents. So then there's something that we're not going to go through this too much here. When they did one of their first big shows on Abigail Thorne's channel here, Khan was invited to be on there. They did one called, let's see here, Ignorance and Censorship, and then another one called Misinformation or Censorship. You know, very simple, ornate, and they had a whole bunch of people watch, and here it is. A wide-ranging, long-running, cross-platform propaganda campaign involving multiple actors requires substantial resources. Until 2020, however, the Royal Institution struggled financially despite its royal patronage and elite trustees. The organization had been forced to rent out its Grand Central London headquarters for conferences, corporate bashes, and weddings. To plug a multi-million-pound budget deficit in late 2015, the Royal Institution auctioned off treasured first editions of works by Charles Darwin, Isaac Newton, and other eminent scientists. The fire sale prompted the BBC to ask whether or not the organization was on the verge of collapse. Miraculously, though, in 2020 of October, the institution received hundreds of thousands of pounds from the UK government's £1.57 billion Culture Recovery Fund to, quote, help face the challenges of the coronavirus pandemic and ensure it has a sustainable future. So, when the Royal Institute, which is connected to and runs with Valent Projects, is about to go under, the government steps in, gives them a whole bunch of money, and basically says that the reason that they're making sure they don't go under is for helping to face challenges of the coronavirus pandemic and ensure it has a sustainable future. Basically, recruiting it as a propaganda arm of the government. Now, the last two characters, we're going to talk about Khan and another guy who's a staffer from Valent Project named Hamish Falconer, and their links to Syrian-led psyops against Bashar al-Assad. This is the last part here, guys. Valent Project staffer Hamish Falconer has disclosed that the exciting, challenging pseudoscience campaign has also received, quote, generous support from the Open Society Foundations of CIA-adjacent billionaire George Soros. After the Washington Post's David Ignatius reported in 1991, Soros was at the heart of a network of, quote, overt operators helping the U.S. intelligence carry out spyless coups against former Soviet satellite states. In July 2021, Soros teamed up with fellow billionaire Bill Gates to purchase a UK-based COVID-19 test developer for $41 million. 3 months later, as Alex Rubinstein documented for The Gray Zone, Soros partnered with tech oligarch Reid Hoffman to found Good Information Inc., a social media censorship operation marketed under the aegis of countering disinformation. So this is how they always make sure that their propaganda is called something that means the opposite of propaganda, and their goal is always to make sure that they demonize everybody that's telling the truth as disinformation or propaganda. So, Hamish is the son of Charlie Falconer, a longtime friend and former roommate of former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Following Blair's May 1997 election victory, Falconer Sr. was elevated to the unelected House of Lords and served in a series of high-ranking government posts throughout his pal's tenure. Along the way, he applied huge pressure to Attorney General Lord Goldsmith to change his view that invading Iraq would be illegal. His intervention may have played a decisive role in greenlighting the war of aggression. Now here's a little bit more about Hamish Falconer and how he's tied to Syria PSYOPs. and then we'll call it a day. That's really most of the article anyway. Hamish Falconer's hiring at Valent Projects in March 2021 highlights the firm's deep ties to the UK intelligence apparatus. At the time, he was ostensibly on leave from the UK Foreign Office. Khan, or the CEO of Valent Projects, trumpeted Falconer's hire on LinkedIn, declaring, quote, "He brings the action end to our work, experimenting and innovating with digital influence for good." Having met in Pakistan over a decade ago, the pair, quote, "have not stopped talking and comparing notes since." Falconer's Spartan Online resume sheds little light on his professional history, noting only a spell at the UK government's Department for International Development, followed by a 7-month gap before he joined the Foreign Office as a diplomat until August 2020. No detail is offered on either on where Falconer has been posted or what his role entailed at any point. He's a graduate from Yale University's Maurice R. Greenberg World Fellows Program, named for the AIG founder who nearly became the CIA director. The Greenberg Fellows Program identifies and grooms prospective future influencers, including no shortage of U.S.-backed would-be coup leaders. Among the most famous alumni of the program is jailed Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. The Greenberg's program's file on Falconer states, quote, "He has led the Foreign Office's terrorism response team, UK efforts to start a peace process in Afghanistan, and served in Pakistan and South Sudan, and served a stint at the National Crime Agency, London's equivalent of the FBI. Counterterror is not a stated Foreign Office purview, but just one of the 3 core areas of focus for the UK Foreign Intelligence Service MI6. It may just be a coincidence the agency's spies typically pose as diplomats overseas. By contrast, Khan's activities between December 2008, when he left his position as hostile environments reporter for BBC, and October 2017, when he joined the elite UK national security think tank Chatham House as an associate fellow, the next entry on his public CV, can be pieced together with much greater certitude, but still only approximately. A leaked document indicates that he first crossed paths with Falconer while managing a, quote, countering violent extremism propaganda campaign for the UK government in Islamabad. The file states or relates to a Foreign Office-funded effort to train, quote, articulate Syrian armed and civilian grassroots opposition entities and promote them to, quote, Syrian and international audiences as a credible alternative to the government of Bashar al-Assad. So propagandists who are training to propagandize against the government of Syria. The project was delivered by ARC, a shadowy intelligence contractor funded by the likely MI6 operative Alistair Harris, which has raked in innumerable lucrative contracts from waging covert information warfare operations on behalf of the UK government. Khan was heavily involved in ARC's Syrian efforts. Another leaked file outlining some of the company's work inside Syria shows that it, quote, oversaw a rebranding of the CIA armed Free Syrian Army to portray it as a moderate, secular force unconnected to the hardcore jihadist factions that dominated the armed opposition. Khan is named as one of the 3 operatives managing the media office of the parallel Syrian National Coalition government controlled by London through intelligence cutouts like ARC. It wasn't the first time Khan been in such murderous company. In some point after leaving ARC in August 2014, he joined Incostrat, another contractor that conducted destabilizing psyops on the UK government's behalf throughout the Syrian crisis. Incostrat delivered, quote, strategic communication support to a variety of armed groups on the ground, including the notoriously brutal Saudi-backed militia known as Jaysh al-Islam. Khan also played a central role in this dubious initiative. In a document discussing its ability to, quote, develop contacts in Arabic-speaking, conflict-affected states, Incostrat bragged how, quote, in his previous career as a journalist, Khan established relationships with and embedded himself into terrorist organizations in the UK and the Middle East, gaining unique insight into their narratives, communication methods, recruitment processes, and management of networks. As a result, Incostrat was founded by ex-Foreign Office political officer Emma Weinberg and UK military intelligence journeyman Paul Tilley, a former director of strategic communications for the UK Ministry of Defence in the Middle East and North Africa. Weinberg left to join Mayday Rescue, parent charity of the fraudulent humanitarian group known as the White Helmets. And we all know about the White Helmets. So let's just go bring this full circle here, guys. It's probable that the Countering Pseudoscience project is just one part of a wider landscape of online astroturf initiatives designed to restore cratering public trust in authorities around COVID policy. Valent Projects has also conducted work for the Institute of Strategic Dialogue, a neoconservative think tank researching, quote, violent actors using the dark web to mobilize recruits and threaten public figures in Europe. This initiative was likely also aimed at countering lockdown opposition. Back in April 2020, Khan appeared on a panel discussion convened by the organization, quote, Countering Disinformation in a Time of COVID-19. At the start of December, the Institute released a brief report, quote, Between Conspiracy and Extremism, a Long COVID Threat, which attempted to frame the radicalization of anti-lockdown protesters as a terrorist threat. What input Khan may have had in this publication was unclear. Now, I'm not going to keep going. I think that you guys should read the article for yourselves, but take it from me. This is basically proving that, like, BreadTube is, if it hasn't already been for years, an operation that is influenced by, if not completely run by, the deep state, depending on the channel. So we have to be very careful. I knew that this was going to happen, and I was always wondering, like, why it was that a lot of these channels will, like, suddenly kind of change their content and go against what they've been saying for years or decades. Now, some of them, it just might be that they're kind of like useful idiots. Like, they have some people that are planted next to them that are giving them bad information, and so they just kind of don't check themselves, and they are easily duped. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with money. And a lot of it also has to do with the subversive and very powerful nature of the CIA and the deep state being able to just, like, get its tendrils into everything. But that's why a lot of us working together as an independent network of hundreds or thousands of journalists and channels that kind of work behind the scenes is so important. That's Political Fight Club kind of in a nutshell, and why I hope it will come to fruition even more than it already is, because stuff like this is important. If there are people that are being bought out to become propagandists or being planted in BreadTube as propagandists, we need to be able to sniff that out and self-correct. We need to cast them out. And if I may, just bringing this kind of full circle, guys, there's only a couple of ways that mainstream media in the United States is going to be able to transfer itself online. The unlikely way that it happens is that Fox, MSNBC, and CNN effectively transfer themselves online. But I don't think we're going to ever have a time where people are going to, young people are going to watch like Stuart Varney or Sean Hannity or any of the dopes on Fox or any of the dopes on CNN or MSNBC. Those guys are not going to transfer well online. They're basically like for the television, and that's their niche dies when the television becomes less watched, which nowadays is, almost everybody gets their news online. So once the older people kind of, pass, it's going to be hard for them to transfer online. So the second option, and this is what's likely happening and what PFC is designed and the way I came up with it to kind of combat this, is that the elites will just throw money at already established YouTube channels and just get them to tweak their rhetoric. And that's why I've always worried so much about TYT and some of these other people, Kalinsky even. I don't have evidence that they're being bought out by the deep state. But I know what their rhetoric used to be like, and then as soon as they ran into money and became influential, it changed in a lot of ways. So you guys, as well as I can, you can tell when somebody has kind of sold out, and you can tell when they're lying to you and giving you propaganda, because a lot of us have been watching these channels for a long time. You can tell. So it's important for us to try to catch them being hypocrites, try to catch them when they change their mind, and try to catch them when they put out propaganda that gets debunked and then they don't retract. That's why it's so important to admit when you're wrong. That's why it's one of the rules, is that we have to admit when we're wrong, and when we've made a mistake on our show. That's okay. That's fine. That means that you're an honest person. But if these channels keep running out there with this stuff, and they never retract, they never admit they're wrong, and they keep running with pro-imperialist or pro-CIA talking points, they're outing themselves. And so we have to protect each other. We have to sniff this out whenever it happens. And that's why I love this article, and that's also why it's, the Gray Zone does such great work. This is important. This is important. So share this everywhere. Read the article for yourself. Read it twice if you need to, like I did. Now I've done it 3 times, because it's important information. And as we move forward and these channels are largely very highly pressed to become propaganda, we need to catch them. And if we can't turn them and get them to stay telling the truth and don't allow themselves to be corrupted, then we need to demonize them and outcast them. I've been trying this with Kalinsky for a year. I don't know what's happened to him, but I've caught him lying to me too much lately, where like now I literally don't trust him at all about anything. So I've kind of cast him out. I've done my best to try to turn him. It didn't work. But, you know, it is what it is. But we have to be able to objectively look at these people and understand that when they do a complete 180 on something for no reason at all, no, like, explained, introspective, you know, synopsis or explanation on exactly why we changed our minds, when they just change their mind randomly, we have to start going, okay, how are they being influenced outside of their show? So this just proves that, you know, there are apparatuses out there, and if you think this is a you know, an outlier or an anomaly, a singular event, no, this is being done all over the place. It's just this is evidence of one that we now can point to and say, of course BreadTube gets influenced by the deep state. So sorry that was a long episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I didn't fumble my way through it too much. But as you can see, it's a very complicated case, so I didn't want to do anything other than try to read it to you without stumble fucking my way through it. So anyway, keep fighting the good fight, and great job, Gray Zone, as usual. This is fantastic work. Fantastic. Keep fighting that good fight. We'll see you.